It's been a busy offseason for the Washington Capitals, and Dan Holmi of Locked On Capitals is here to talk about the new goaltending situation and the changes that have come in our nation's capital. All that and more coming up on this episode of the Locked On NHL Podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL Podcast. Gil Martin, so glad you could join us today, and thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Washington Capitals, Dan Holmi. And Dan, it's been an eventful offseason for the Caps. Let's start with the biggest position that was the biggest question mark coming into this offseason, goaltending. How pleased are you with the way the Capitals have handled the situation between the pipes?
I mean, I'm very happy. I don't think you could ask for anything more than to pick up a Stanley Cup winning goalie. And if you take a look at Kuemper, he signed a 5-year deal at $5.25 million per season in 57 games for Colorado in 20 and 22. Kuemper went 37-12-4 with a .921 save percentage and a 2.54 goals against. Just a great play. And then he went on and he posted a 10-4 record and a .902 save percentage en route to the Cup. So, I mean, the biggest question out there is Darcy Kuemper going to be able to duplicate that with the Capitals? He had the Avalanche defense in front of him. So, but I have a positive outlook on this team because it has to be a better tandem than what the Capitals had last season.
No question about that. And how about the backup situation? How do you feel about that, and where does it stand right now?
So Charlie Lindgren was a netminder for the St. Louis Blues. He's coming off a standout season that saw him go 5-0-0 with a .958 save percentage and a 1.22 goals against with the Blues. Also, while dominating with a .925 save percentage, good for second in the AHL. So, I mean, I think that the Capitals went out there. I think that, Darcy Kuemper is going to carry the bulk of the mail for the team. But Charlie Lindgren is a good option as a backup. A kind of an unproven commodity, but I think he has some good upside. He played well last season in the AHL and his brief stint with the Blues. So things are looking up for the Capitals in the netminding department.
Well, that's certainly good news. It's been a question mark for a little while. Out of all the players that departed from Washington, who do you think they will miss the most?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one when you take a look at, the players that are coming and going. And I guess it ultimately remains to be seen what the roster is going to look like on opening day. But you take a look at Vanacek, you look at Samsonov. I got to say that I'm a little bit upset that, I guess upset is the word, that they weren't able to work out something with one of the netminders. I would say that Vanacek had some upside to him. But the problem with all of it is that both of those netminders were due for a raise. And I don't think you're going to be able to pay a backup netminder, $3 million a year, and then have Darcy Kuemper on the books with a big contract. But ultimately, I think that Vanacek would have possibly been a good backup for Darcy Kuemper if they could have got the deal structured right. But that just wasn't in the cards.
And how about as far as skaters go?
Well, just taking a look at who's coming and going, I guess, like I say, it depends on who's there's still some moves that could be made. A lot of the players that are out there, I think that it's going to be a pretty solid lineup going forward. They picked up Strome, they picked up Connor Brown. So the departures and that kind of thing, I guess, like, it remains to be seen once the dust settles, but I'm more positive about the additions that were made to the team.
What do you think Strome brings to the team first and foremost?
So Dylan Strome played for the Blackhawks last season, and it's a bit of an interesting move. If you take a look at that Chicago Blackhawks team, I don't know what's going on. They moved on from DeBrincat, Andre Fleury earlier in the season, so that team is in a bit of disarray. But Dylan Strome is a good player for the Caps. Ostensibly, he is going to play second line center for Nick Backstrom in his absence because he had that hip resurfacing procedure done. And I guess it remains to be seen on how much time he will miss. The outlook on that procedure is not very good. So Dylan Strome could be playing that position for some time. But let's say Nick Backstrom does come back in a hurry for some strange reason. They could always slot him in at wing or possibly third line center.
Yeah, definitely some possibilities. Obviously, fans of the league focus a lot on Alexander Ovechkin. Who do you see as his line mates heading into training camp about a month from now?
So what I see is it's going to be Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, and Connor Brown. I think that that is who's going to end up being on the top line. Tom Wilson, as we know, spent a lot of time on that top line, right wing. TJ Oshie also spent some time, and Connor Sheary up there. But I think that Connor Brown will ultimately be the top line, right wing. And it's a good position for him to be in because having line mates of Kuznetsov and Ovechkin, I don't think there's a whole lot to complain about there.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't think so. Is there a prospect or a couple of young players who the Capitals are really hoping take a jump and make the big club this year?
So I think that Connor McMichael is due for his big opportunity. He has been slotted in as a center, but oftentimes plays wing as well. I think that this training camp for that's going to be coming up here soon in September. I think it's going to be a battle for some of those positions. Brian McClellan, the GM for the Capitals, said just because you think that I signed these players and you think where they're going to go. You don't really know. It's going to be a battle, and these players are going to have to fight for their jobs and where they're at. But I would say Connor McMichael would be one of them. Hendrix LaPierre is another one that is going to be due for his opportunity out there. But, it just kind of widening the lens out a little bit further than that. There's that Ivan Mirochichenko, who is one of the top draft picks for the Capitals. I think that it's just going to be a really great season or two for the Capitals as a lot of these younger players are going to work their way into the lineup because this is a team that is often talked about that needs to get younger and faster. And let's face it, Alex Ovechkin is not getting any younger with all that gray hair. Father Time is coming for us all. Don't tell him that, though, as he continues to score a lot of goals.
He does indeed. We have about a month and a half before training camp gets underway. What, if any, other moves do you think this team is looking to make?
Yeah, I mean, I was asked about that on a previous pod. I don't see them making a whole lot of other moves. You take a look at Borgstrom, they signed him, they signed some other players out there as well, just some kind of depth players. I think that the Capitals are sitting pretty good with the players that they signed. The big marquee names, your Dylan Strome, your Connor Brown. But even if you go down the lineup a little bit and some of the depth moves that they made there as well, I think the Capitals are sitting pretty, if you will, as we head into the training camp. There's nothing to me that I think really needs to be addressed.
No glaring needs in your mind at this point.
No, and the thing of it is I was pretty hard on Brian McClellan, on my podcast. I said he didn't do anything with the goaltending situation, and he just kind of proved me wrong in every example. He took care of the net mining situation. He took care of Tom Wilson and Nick Backstrom and any issues with depth on the defense. So I gave Brian McClellan A+ marks on what he did. Now the question remains: is the chemistry? Will all these players gel together? Because sometimes things on paper aren't as good in actuality, but on paper, and that's all we can go with right now. It seems like a really solid lineup.
All right, Dan, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find my podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Locked On Capitals. You can find us on Twitter at Locked On Caps, and you can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218, and of course, as always, on YouTube. When you're on YouTube, make sure and hit that subscribe button, and if you like the videos, hit the thumbs up button. It really helps grow the channel.
All right, Dan Holmi, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, of course, the NHL, combat sports, esports, tennis, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.